Hey guys, I'm joined by my friend Jim Moons, or Matt Kelly, or what's your name?
Just Matt.
Just Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. And we're doing a movie review. The movie we want to review is the 1998 action horror film, Blade. Now, Blade was directed by Stephen Norrington, who prior to this directed the low-budget horror film Death Machine, and he would go on to do the film adaptation of Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Now, before becoming a director, Stephen Norrington began his career as a sculptor and makeup effects artist, working under people like Dick Smith, Rick Baker, and Stan Winston. He even worked on films like Aliens and Split Second. And the movie was written by David S. Goyer, who prior to this wrote several low-budget horror films for Full Moon, like Demonic Toys and Arcade. He also wrote The Crow City of Angels, and around the same time that this came out, he co-wrote Dark City, and he would go on to co-write the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight movies, as well as movies like Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. He's become primarily known for doing comic book adaptations.
He did a lot of them.
Yeah, he's even written some comics himself. And the movie is based on the Marvel Comics character originally created by Marv Wolfman Gene Colan, who first appeared as a recurring character in Marvel's Tomb of Dracula comics, which were obviously Marvel's modern update of the classic Bram Stoker story. But the character of Blade proved popular enough to get his own spin-off series, and actually before this movie, Blade actually appeared in several episodes of the animated Spider-Man series in the 90s. Now, besides the Blade comics, of course, David S. Goyer was also heavily inspired by the old Hammer Dracula films, as well as the 1974 Hammer film Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter. I also think Goyer was definitely taking inspiration from Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, which is a novel about vampires taking over the Earth. But in that novel, vampirism was presented as a contagion or a disease, and in that book you saw the vampires eventually organize into their own civilization. Also, with this being based on a Marvel comic and being a vampire movie, it really does effectively cross over the horror genre with the superhero genre, which at the time was kind of a novel idea. I mean, sure, you had The Crow and Spawn before this, but it wasn't something that you saw that often. So the premise of Blade is that for thousands of years, vampires have been secretly living among us, and they have their own underground civilization, and for the most part, they view us as being not much more than cattle, and have been secretly feeding on the human population. But the story follows a vampire hunter named Blade, who is actually part vampire himself. It turns out that when his mother was pregnant with him, she was attacked by a vampire, and as a result, he inherited all of the vampire's strengths, but none of their weaknesses, except for the thirst for human blood, which he tries to keep suppressed. And for years now, Blade and his mentor, Abraham Whistler, have been waging war against the vampire nation. But in the beginning of the film, a doctor named Karen Jensen is attacked by a vampire. Blade saves her, but she's still bitten and is infected with the vampire contagion. So throughout the film, she's trying to find a potential cure for vampirism, something that Blade thinks is impossible. But in the film, a vampire named Deacon Frost, who over the years has become Blade's arch nemesis, he's trying to resurrect an ancient god called La Magra, who he believes to be the deity that created the vampire species. But if Frost is successful at resurrecting this entity, it will basically be the end of the world as we know it. So now Blade, Whistler, and Karen have to stop Frost before it's too late. Meanwhile, Blade discovers that his archenemy Frost might actually hold the secret of who and what Blade truly is. Now, the film stars Wesley Snipes as Blade. Now, admittedly, I've not read the comics, but the movie version of Blade is probably one of the most badass characters ever committed to film. You also have Stephen Dorff as the main villain, Deacon Frost.
Another badass performance. Frost is a great villain. Now, Deacon Frost is a character from the Tomb of Dracula comics. Again, I have not read the comics, but from what I understand, the comic book version of this character is actually quite different from his movie counterpart. In the comics, he's portrayed as being older, more sophisticated, and kind of fits in more with that Dracula archetype, whereas the Deacon Frost of the movie was clearly a young man when he was turned, and he's sort of portrayed as kind of an arrogant, bratty teenager, yet there are moments where he's actually kinda likable. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a scumbag, but he's kind of an interesting scumbag, and that might be owed more so to Stephen Dorff's performance rather than the writing itself. And then you have Kristofferson, who absolutely steals the movie as Abraham Whistler. Seriously, Whistler is probably the best part of the film. Whistler's not a character from the comics, although I believe he was later incorporated into the comics. He actually made his first appearance in the animated Spider-Man series, where he was voiced by Malcolm McDowell, but he was an original creation from David S. Goyer, because I believe Goyer's script had been floating around Hollywood for about 10 years before this movie got made, so Blade and Whistler's appearances in Spider-Man the Animated Series were obviously based on Goyer's script. Now, Goyer has said that he specifically wrote Whistler to be almost like a modern Abraham Van Helsing. Like, you could almost look at him as sort of a biker bar slash redneck version of Van Helsing. You also have Nebuchadnezzar Wright, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, as Karen Jensen. She does a good job, but I will say Karen is somewhat of an underwritten character, although I did appreciate that they did not make her like the typical love interest. Actually, she's really not a love interest at all, and I feel like a lesser film would have tried to do that, would have tried to have some sort of romantic relations between her and Blade, and it's not like that at all. You also have Udo Kier in a small role as one of the elder vampires, and Udo Kier is amazing. Like, he's one of those actors who's been in everything. He's shown up in, like, Dario Argento's Suspiria, and he played Dracula in the 70s Paul Morrissey Dracula movie.
So what do you think of Blade?
I grew up with all three of those movies. I never saw them in theaters. I would watch them on TV when they were on, you know. My grandpa had, like, the fancy movie channels for that time.
Okay.
You know, they had, like, you know, it was where you could have, like, over 100 and something channels. And they would always play, like, Blade 1, 2, and 3. Blade 2, it's just a great movie. I mean, Wesley Snipes is, like, it's definitely one of his best, or it is his, like, most people know him from that. Mm-hmm. And I just love everything about, like, I think, like, for its time, it was doing a lot of different things. And, I mean, everything from the soundtrack to, like, the pacing of the movie, it was just cool. It really set the tone for, like, it was before comic book movies were what they are now.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's just something different. I think everything, like, the acting is good, the chemistry. I think the chemistry between Wesley Snipes and Kris Kristofferson as Blade and Whistler is just, you can't go wrong. It's amazing. Just really, they hit it off, and, like, they really...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they just got everything right with the chemistry of, like, with how they directed Wesley Snipes and...
Yeah.
Like, it's just, like, I'm a big fan of, like, drum and bass music, and, like, so, like, I think it's the soundtracks for this one especially,
especially the music in the rave scene in the beginning.
Yeah. The rave scenes it's just what I love about, like, the Blade movies, is just there's always, like, a crazy rave scene where, like, shit's about to just pop off, and it's just, like, it's just great. I vaguely remember, like, when the movie first came out, I was only a little kid, but I remember seeing kids talk about it, like, oh, I never got to see it yet, no, I want to see it, because it was rated R, and it's definitely one of Wesley Snipes' best roles, and Whistler is one of... Kris Kristofferson is, like, he's an old school actor, like, and he was a musician, he's in a band with Johnny Cash and stuff, they both, I mean, it was just great. There's so many just cool stuff about that movie.
Now, I first saw this movie when I was a little kid. It was on TV, I think. My dad was watching it on TV. Later on, I ended up seeing the movie again with my aunt and my cousin. After a while, this became a movie that I would kind of just watch all the time. And it really is, like, one of my favorite 90s horror films and one of my favorite action films, because I think it perfectly combines the action genre and the horror genre.
Yeah. I like Stephen Dorff in this movie, too. He's a pretty underrated actor, but for that time, he was just in a lot of those movies. I like how the character of Deacon Frost is basically just like a party boy Chad type
but he's also like a rebel in the vampire world. In a way, he's very similar to I don't know if you've ever read Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles.
No, I never. Yeah.
He's very similar to the character of Lestat, especially in the third Vampire Chronicles novel, Queen of the Damned, where Lestat doesn't give a fuck about the rules of the vampire world. In a way, that's kind of what Deacon Frost is. Deacon Frost is a lot more evil than Lestat. Yeah. But what I do think is interesting is this movie doesn't explore it that much. Blade 2 does a little bit, but if you really think about it from the vampire's point of view, they're just doing this to survive.
Yeah.
And from their point of view, Blade would almost be like a serial killer. There's also like a hierarchy within the vampire world where there are vampires that were born vampires, what they call purebloods, and then there's what Deacon Frost is, where he was a human who was attacked by a vampire and became one.
Yeah.
And in the movie, you realize that Frost and the other non-pureblood vampires are basically treated as second-class citizens in vampire society. That's an aspect of the vampire's world in this movie that I thought was really interesting, that I almost wish the movie would have explored a little bit more, which is why it's ironic that Frost, despite being human once, seems to hate humans more than the purebloods do, and it's also ironic that he ends up becoming the vessel and the avatar for the god that created vampires.
It's funny, the scenes with like the vampire clan, when they're always like, when they're sitting down, Deacon Frost, and they're telling him that he's like, he's blowing their cover and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that's all just like really just interesting. Like it adds more to like
the lore.
The lore, yeah.
And you also have the great Udo Kier as
Udo
one of
Kier.
the elders.
Yeah.
That man literally looks like a vampire.
Now, before Matt and I continue rambling on about this movie, here's our friend John giving his thoughts on Blade.
This is my video on the first Blade movie for Kristian's YouTube channel. Growing up being a fan of Marvel comic books, it amazed and surprising to see how Marvel took a minor character who was not popular, yet the movie made him a popular character. Wesley Snipes' Blade is what makes this movie. He's a badass, skilled martial arts. Blade was born half human and half vampire. He doesn't have any of the weaknesses that vampires die from. His only weakness is the thirst. This is the movie that made me a fan of Wesley Snipes as a kid. As I said before on Kristian's YouTube channel in the past, I used to be afraid of horror movies. This is one of the few horror movies that made me get over my fears of horror movies, because I thought it was awesome and cool. He had a vampire hunter who kicked ass and killed the vampires. As a little kid, I had an action figure of Blade of Wesley Snipes form. It was a pretty cool kick-ass toy, despite this movie was not for kids. Believe it or not, before Wesley Snipes got the part to Blade, they originally wanted LL Cool J, or Denzel Washington, or Lawrence Fishburne. Denzel Washington is a great actor. He has done some good occasional action movies, but I don't see him as Blade. Nothing against LL Cool J's acting, again, I just don't see him as Blade. Lawrence Fishburne, another great actor, but again, I also don't see him as Blade. This part was written for Wesley Snipes. This was a character he was born to play. I love the opening scene we are introduced to Blade, where he saves a civilian's life at a bloodbath nightclub of vampires. As I got older when I read about the making of this movie, I found it interesting before playing Blade. Wesley Snipes was originally going to play Black Panther in a movie that was thought of at the time, but was never made. This could have been interesting, and I definitely could have seen Wesley Snipes play a good Black Panther around this time. The character Whistler, played by Kristofferson, was not in the original comic books. He was created for the Spider-Man animated series TV show, voiced by Malcolm McDowell from A Clockwork Orange. I'm glad they used this character in the movie. It works very well. As I've gotten older, I find it interesting the movie explores vampire mythology, how Frost needs Blade and become a vampire god. Deacon Frost is an evil, sadistic bastard. He's cocky, he's rude. Overall, he's just not a good person. No wonder why Blade wants to kill him. This movie is directed by Stephen Norrington. I'm not sure why he hasn't directed that much since this movie. Believe it or not, he was a possible candidate to direct a Freddy vs. Jason movie. I forgot either he was rejected or he might have turned down the directing job. I've never seen A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, despite that was a flop. I've heard mixed things about it, and that has been the last movie he's directed to date since then. A movie I enjoy going back to remind myself how we would not have had so many great Marvel movies if it was not for this movie.
it's just cool. It's just a cool movie. It's just a great, and it's just well done. And like I said, I just love like the soundtrack. I just love seeing Blade like just go to a rave and just like starts fucking shit up and just like starts slashing and it's a well done, like the fight scenes are really well done too.
Oh yeah,
They're
definitely.
just great.
Some of the best like fight scenes in an action movie, I think.
It's just this movie just gets going. It just gets going. It just
it's a very briskly paced film.
Yeah. If you go back to like that time period when Marvel superhero movies were starting to like slowly come out, like they always had like a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
Like, some of like some great things in dialogue, like the first like with what we were talking about, like when he like brings back when he's in the hospital and the cops are shooting him, he's like, "Motherfucker, have you lost your damn mind?" And then
yes.
There's definitely little bits of humor that are just like that really work, and it's not like over the top, like
One of my favorite lines is when Blade has a page from the Vampire Bible that he shows Whistler. Whistler just like sniffs it. He's like, "Smells like a vampire wiped his ass with it."
Yeah. It's just well done. It's just a great movie. I just think it's just a perfect. I mean, Wesley Snipes just looks great as Blade too.
Yes.
Like they just got his like design, like his like look for the movie, right? Mm-hmm. And
he's just. It's the literal definition of cool.
Yeah, like he has like the trench coat and like the armors and the Wesley Snipes was like a producer on all these. Not this, but he went on to do.
He produced this movie too.
Yeah, but I guess like he must have had a lot of say for the character.
Yeah, you can tell he definitely cared about this character.
But yeah, I know we're kind of rambling on, but Blade is an awesome movie. It's one of my favorite horror vampire films. It's one of my favorite superhero films, because again, I think the movie perfectly combines the two genres. It's one of my favorite 90s action films, and in general, it is, I think, one of the best comic book movies ever made. I would hold it right up there with Tim Burton's Batman, The Crow, and The Dark Knight. And sure, there are aspects of the film which are kind of silly when you stop to think about them, and there are some plot holes in the movie, but you also don't care because the film is so well made and it's just so fucking cool. Like, this movie really does bring out my inner teenager. And as Matt alluded to before, the soundtrack for the movie is amazing. Like, the songs they use, especially during the rave scene in the beginning, and the score by Mark Isham, I think I'm saying his name right, who also did the score for The Hitcher.
Definitely a childhood favorite.
Yeah, definitely.
It still holds up to. It's just. I mean, yeah, it is. It's not dated, but it's like you can tell that like it's like one of the better. Like it's just not a like what you said. It's just not. It's not like a bad action movie. It's like the action movies are just well done. The action scenes, fight scenes. I mean, I love like how Blade is like. What he said, like, you know, you already met Mr. Crispy at the hospital. Yes. That's just funny dialogue, and like, and it's not like in your face.
Or like when Mr. Crispy is like talking to Deacon Frost about Blade, like, listen, you gotta watch this guy, you gotta be careful with him, you know, and like and then fucking Deacon Frost is like, yeah, shut the fuck up!
Yeah, basically Deacon Frost is just like a douche, he'd be like a rich kid douchebag.
Yeah, that's kind of how he plays it.
Like just a spoiled brat. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I also love at the end when Deacon Frost gets possessed by the vampire god and like Blade's fighting him. Blade cuts him in half at one point, but then we see like Deacon Frost like merge back, the two body parts merge back together, and you just see Blade turn around going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Now, as my friend John alluded to before, Blade in a lot of ways was really Marvel's first mainstream hit. Now, of course, in the 90s, they had the animated X-Men series, which was highly acclaimed. They had the Spider-Man series. But in terms of, like, their live-action stuff at the time, a lot of it was ultra low budget fare. Like, of course you had the Incredible Hulk series in the 70s, which was good for what it was, and it did take itself seriously for the time. I know there was a live-action Spider-Man series in the 70s as well, but in terms of live-action movies, I mean, you had the Dolph Lundgren Punisher film from 1989, you had the Albert Pune Captain America movie from 1990, which again was ultra low budget, you had the Roger Corman Fantastic Fantastic Four movie, which was never even officially released. Also, Marvel went bankrupt in the mid-90s. Like, they were not doing well at this time, and they kinda needed Blade. So this was their first real, like, live-action, big-budgeted hit. And in many ways, this paved the way for Bryan Singer's X-Men and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and eventually the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
You can watch the Blade movie, and then you could watch all the other Marvel movies after that, and you could see, like, the evolution of, like, how they were made and how, like, like, now they're just putting anything out that they're making. They have other movies they're gonna start making. This came out, I think, this was before X-Men. I think it came out, it didn't come
2 years before
2 years before X-Men, yeah.
But outside of Marvel, you could see Blade's influence on a movie like The Matrix.
Came out a little bit after Blade, I think, right? Something like that?
Yeah. This came out before The Matrix.
Yeah.
Like, even, this movie does bullet time.
It does bullet time, yeah.
Yeah, and it did it before The Matrix. I really do think The Matrix might have taken... Granted, I don't know if maybe The Matrix was shot around the same time that this was shot, but I feel like the Wachowskis might have taken some inspiration from this movie.
Also, with Blade's combination of action and horror, you could definitely see its influence on some of the action horror films of the early 2000s, like Underworld and Resident Evil, and even Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead. Now, this next movie I'm about to bring up is specifically based on a DC comic, but you could also see Blade's influence on a movie like 2005's Constantine with Keanu Reeves.
Now, the movie spawned 2 sequels. You had Blade 2 in 2002, and then Blade Trinity in 2004. And then there was a TV series which had... I think it was actually in continuity with the movies, but it wasn't Wesley Snipes in the TV series. It was fucking Sticky Fingers playing Blade.
A rapper from back in the day, yeah.
I didn't mind the TV series. I don't know if you ever saw it.
I saw like a clip of it.
Keep in mind, I haven't seen it since I was like 14, so I really don't remember how it was quality-wise, but I remember kind of liking it.
I remember when it was on, I just never got around to seeing it.
Yeah, I remember it was on Spike TV.
Yeah.
You
Spike
remember
TV.
them?
I remember Spike TV, yeah.
But yeah, there was a TV series, and I think there was an anime series as well. It was like a short-lived thing. Or I think like Marvel was doing like a series of anime projects, but Blade was one of those, and of course Wesley Snipes would reprise the role of Blade in Deadpool and Wolverine, which loosely connects this with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, the Blade movies are not set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but that movie specifically was dealing with the whole multiverse concept, because right now Marvel is getting really big into that, and it sort of explains that the Blade movies were sort of taking place on a parallel Earth, but basically in that you have Wesley Snipes back as Blade, which I have to say, when I saw his role in Deadpool and Wolverine, I definitely fangirled out at that when he showed up.
He was my favorite part of the whole thing. And he wasn't just used as a cameo. They used him in the story, yeah. There's only one Blade. There's only going to be one Blade. And it just, that was...
Or like when Deadpool says, I thought you were retired. Retarded?
Yeah.
Retired.
Yeah.
And for a while now, they've been trying to do a Blade reboot, which would officially be set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
What the hell's becoming of that? Like, is that actually happening? Do you know?
They say it's happening, but it's like, they keep losing directors.
Oh,
that guy Maharaja Ali is supposed to be in it. Well, actually, I like it. He's a good actor. He probably could do okay, but it's just, every time I see the Blade movies, I always remember, like, it's going to be hard for them to top what they had with Wesley Snipes' Blade.
Mm-hmm. And before I end this video, here's my friend Christian Feliciano giving his thoughts on Blade.
To me, casting Wesley Snipes as Blade is just as beautiful as casting RDJ as Iron Man, or Kelsey Grammer as Beast, or John Cena as Peacemaker. It's just the perfect casting. Like, you couldn't ask for a better actor in that role. It's like they were born to play that role, and Wesley Snipes is just fantastic. Yes, he's different than in the comics, because in the original comics, Blade is a human. He carries a blade. If I remember correctly, it's a wooden stake, but it's carved to be like a blade, and it kills vampires. Awesome. And then what happens is he gets bitten by the vampire Morbius, the living vampire Morbius. So then, therefore, he becomes a vampire, and now he has to fight vampires as a vampire, even though he hates vampires. It's a cool idea. So it's different, but I will say that the spirit of Blade is still alive. Like, he still talks like Blade, still acts like Blade. He's very uncompromising. He will kill any vampire. Doesn't matter if you're a good vampire or bad vampire. He just hates vampires. And I love that about Blade, that he's so conflicted. He's so driven to be, to do what he does. I love it. I think the movie, don't get me wrong, I prefer the comics, the story in the comics, because I love the Tomb of Dracula stuff and all that. However, the movie is just fantastic, and this is a great start to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's probably my favorite thing about this movie, is that it is the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This, without Blade, you don't get X-Men, you don't get Spider-Man, Daredevil, Hulk, and then eventually Iron Man and Avengers. And now that Deadpool 3 showed Blade in it, we now know that the movie is connected to the rest of the universe. Or the multiverse, I should say. Because obviously in Blade the movie, you don't see a news article about Punisher or Spider-Man or anything like that. You don't see the Daily Bugle anywhere. But I will say that it still counts because he showed up in Deadpool 3. So therefore, this movie is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it is one of the best ones. It's definitely a pre-Avengers movie, because in the sense that, and what I mean by that is this. Pre-Avengers, they really didn't care if the comics followed, or the movie followed the comics. They really didn't care. They would just make up their own stories, create their own origins, whatever they wanted to do. And we just took it. Batman was barely like the comics. The original Tim Burton one. Superman was like the comics, but at the same time, like he didn't fight any real supervillains except for Zod and maybe Lex. But even then, it's like Lex wasn't really Lex like he is in the comics. There's a pre-Avengers and then there's a post-Avengers. However, I will say this is one of the best of the pre-Avenger movies. I think Blade, whoever did this, they have passion for it, and you can tell that they love the character. They didn't follow the character very much, but that's okay, because it still works. They took it seriously, the action is well done and well choreographed. I mean, this is pre-Star Wars, and it is badass to see them fight with swords and stuff like that, or to see Blade like beating the hell out of a bunch of people in a club or whatever. Like, I think it's just amazing, like how fun this movie is in terms of the action. And then the graphics are pretty good. There's a moment where I won't spoil too much, but there is a moment where a vampire dies by sunlight, and it's just vicious and brutal and violent. Like, it was just it was done really, 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 really well. The story is cool. I mean, it's a comic book plot. You know what I mean? You got Frost wanting to become a god, and then Blade has to stop him. It's simple, but it works. It works for a Blade movie. It's perfect for a Blade movie. That's all I gotta say. I know that superheroes today, they like to do these very complicated stories, and no, you can do a simple comic book story and just have the hero face the villain, and that's it. You don't need all this moral ambiguity nonsense where it's like, oh my god, we're gonna fight each other because we have we're gonna be registered, and silly stuff. I like that Blade just kept it simple, and it was good. It worked for Blade. The vampire mythology in this is awesome as well. The idea that it is a virus as opposed to a supernatural thing works. I prefer the supernatural vampires, but yes, that also works. The writing is great. The dialogue is fantastic. The greatest line in all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is at the end, and I'm sorry for anybody if I spoiled this for you, but I have to say this line, and that is that some motherfuckers always try to ice skate uphill. I love that line. I want them, when they remake Blade, to do that line again. I don't care where they put. They gotta have that in there somewhere. But yeah, I really just enjoyed that. So yeah, overall, I love this movie. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. And if you haven't, shame on you. You need to check out Blade. Blade is one of the best movies in the Marvel Universe. And if you like Marvel, check out Blade.
So yeah, guys, that was our review of Blade, and our next movie review will be on Blade 2.